Mike Brown, the former FEMA director.
Joining us here is the former FEMA director.
History, I think, was very unkind to you, my friend. Very unkind.
Mr. Brown, thanks for being with us.
This is Michael Brown Unplugged.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Michael Brown Unplugged. Let's get started because you know what's going to happen this week? We're going to have the first of the two presidential debates occurring down in Miami, Florida. I think one on Tuesday night and one on Wednesday night, and it's going to be a blast because, well, they're all going to be they're going to be gunning for Biden whether he's there or not. It's not going to make any difference. So I think we got 57. Let's just be honest. I think we have 57 Democrats, and I picked that number for a particular reason. I think we have 57 Democrats running for president who were in South Carolina this past week. They've all kind of been working their way down Interstate 95 for these two nights of debates on Tuesday and Wednesday in Miami. Now, every Democrat whose last name is not spelled Biden was prepared to jump on the one candidate whose name is spelled Bideen. Did I see Bideen? Biden. I can't spell. And I'm getting ready to make fun of somebody. They jumped on Biden because the former vice president made this gaffe describing how he got along with pro-segregation colleagues when he was a young senator from Delaware. And this was seen by every other candidate as the opening that they've been waiting for, hoping, just praying for, so that they could start chipping away at Biden's lead over the rest of the field. Now, what's a gaffe? I make gaffes, just like Biden, Bideen. A gaffe. Well, Merriam-Webster defines gaffe as a, quote, social or diplomatic blunder. It also spells it gaffe, G-A-F-F or G-A-F-F-E, which means that whichever way you spell it, maybe that's a gaffe. I worry about things like that. No, actually, I don't. So for, 72 straight hours, it's kind of like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's concentration camp remark that still appears over the weekend, that was still appearing in my Twitter feed. Now, I haven't looked this morning. It's too early this morning to check it. I don't want to look at my Twitter feed this early on a Monday morning. But that stupid gaffe about having worked with segregationists, most of whom, here's what I find funny about Biden talking about how he had worked with these segregationists. First, whether it was Senator Hollings or Senator Eastland, doesn't make any difference who it was. Some of them renounced their segregationist backgrounds. Some of them denounced their old racist selves. But what I found funny is by Biden saying that I worked with these segregationist Democrats in the 1970s, didn't he just admit that Democrats were the party of the segregationists in the 1950s, the 1960s, and the 1970s? That's the real gaffe, but of course, nobody wanted to talk about that. So a bunch of people came to his defense, including Congressman John Lewis, a civil rights activist. He's a Democrat from Georgia, who said, I don't think the remarks are offensive. During the height of the civil rights movement, we worked with people and got to know people that were members of the Klan, people who opposed us, even people who beat us and arrested us and jailed us. Now, I want you to compare and contrast the downpour of criticism of Biden with the so what response in 2008 to Barack Obama. Do you remember this in 2008?
Because, it is just wonderful to be back in Oregon. And over the last 15 months, we've traveled to every corner of the United States. I've now been in 57 states. I think one left to go. Alaska and Hawaii, I was not.
Everybody focuses on, I've been in 57 states. Now, what concerns me, though, is not the 57 states. Those of you who listen to me on the radio know that I've made fun of that 57 state remark for years. But what's always bothered me even more so was I have one state left to go, Alaska and Hawaii. Alaska, 1, Hawaii, 2. So he's been in 57 states. He has one left to go, and that one is Alaska, Hawaii. I didn't know that Alaska, Hawaii was one state, but what do I know? Now, let's be honest. Obama was not known as being a dope about American political geography. So the gaffe that he made when he made those comments lasted all of about a nanosecond. Democrats, presidential candidates, members of the U.S. House and the Senate, the rank and file, are really sharply divided along a number of planes. They're divided along the economic plane, capitalism versus socialism. They're divided among social planes, gender, race, age, everything but, I think there's probably 57 different things that there's 57 candidates, and they're divided along 57 things, but there's one thing there's two things that bring them together, Joe and Biden. But the reason is because Biden's too centrist. That's one. Biden is too wealthy. At some point, they're going to start talking about Biden's wealth. He's too male. Biden still identifies as a male. I don't get it. He's too white and he's too old. That's 57 things right there. It's that Democrats that are not running for president, which I think there's 57 people not running for president on the Democrat ticket. How can he be leading by, according to the Real Clear Politics, average of polls, is 20 points over second place contender Elizabeth Warren? That's in one South Carolina poll. And by 27 points, 45-18, over running up Bernie Sanders in another. Here's why Biden has that kind of lead. It's because he has the one attribute that none of those rivals have or are likely to develop. And that is this. Democrats think that Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump in November. According to the Business Insider Power Rankings, quote, Biden not only has unparalleled name recognition among Democrats, he is also the only candidate who more than half of Democrats believe can win against Trump. Now, I don't know, but when it comes to gaffes, let's be honest, Donald Trump can make some good gaffes. Meanwhile, the other Democratic candidates are just scratching their heads. They're probably sniping at their aides like I watched John McCain do one time. They're looking for anything, any way to knock Biden off his perch. So maybe the debates later this week will provide one of those 57 or 77 or 97 candidates in those Democrat debates. Maybe something will provide them the path. But I think to the Democrats' continued dismay, I don't think it's going to. But we'll have fun. And if it's true, and I don't know whether he'll stick to it or not, but the president has said that he is going to live tweet the debates. Now, I don't know I'm probably going to have to listen to the debates on the radio, assuming that some radio station somewhere is carrying them because, I have a road trip that I have to make Tuesday. So I don't know whether or not I'll be able to. Wednesday night, I think I'll be able to watch Wednesdays, but Tuesday, I don't know. I'll probably be on an airplane and not able to watch it. But who knows? So I might have to depend on you guys to let me know who makes the first gaffe, because this is the year of the gaffe. The other thing that hit the news this weekend, and I don't want to go into the details about it because, quite frankly, I don't think, even with a podcast, going through all of the machinations of Congresswoman Ilham Omar, Democrat of Minnesota. Apparently she committed immigration fraud and and according to, I think, Minnesota law, but I'm not a Minnesota lawyer, so I don't know, she may have committed marriage fraud too by being married to her brother and her husband all at the same time. And that she does that some reason so that somebody can get here or somebody can get divorced or somebody can get married or somebody can go to school. I don't know what it is. But here's what we do know and need to know is that this story has been in the Minnesota news circles since since before she even announced running. But they sat on it because nobody, oh Lord, nobody wants to criticize a Muslim black woman running for Congress, right? Well, apparently it got so heated that finally the Star Tribune, the Minnesota Star Tribune, finally dug up the old records and looked at them and ran a story over the weekend that, yes, indeed, it looks like Ilham Omar, the Democrat from Minnesota, the Muslim congresswoman that is truly an anti-Semite. Let's just be honest. She is an unabashed anti-Semite. Apparently committed immigration fraud, and throughout her entire legal marriage has been married to somebody else through what she describes as a faith marriage. You know, I just want to say this. I don't think the state ought to be involved in marriages. The fact that, just like I don't think I should have to have a license to legally conceal a weapon on my body, nor do I think that you ought to have a license from the government to get married. That's just how much of a libertarian I am. And the other thing that look, Monday you might as well just get ready. I've got a boatload of stuff I got to get through. Apparently Elizabeth Warren, if you take Joe Biden out of the picture, which I really don't want Joe Biden taken out of the picture. Actually, I take that back. I really do want Joe Biden taken out of the picture because I want all these socialists and Marxists who are running for president on the Democrat ticket. I want one of them to get the nomination. Well, Elizabeth Warren says that she has a group of people that she thinks ought to receive reparations. Gay couples. I'm just telling you the story. If you can help me understand how it is that me or you or the government or anybody owes reparations to gay couples, I'm all ears. But she has added gay and lesbian couples to her growing list of groups for whom she would support reparations. She cites a tax code that was discriminatory against non-heterosexual married couples when she tweeted on Saturday this: "It wasn't until marriage equality became the law that gay and lesbian couples could jointly file tax returns, so they paid more in taxes. Our government owes them more than the $50 million for the years our discriminatory tax code left them out. We must right these wrongs." Here's what I think. I think that if you look at the marriage penalty, and I know that over the years they have tried to reduce the marriage penalty, which was this: if you had two income earners, a husband and a wife, those two people generally paid a penalty for being married versus the amount of taxes they would pay if they weren't married and they were just filing individual. But apparently Elizabeth Warren still thinks that, well, you know, even though the marriage penalty may still exist to some degree for heterosexual couples, we ought to pay reparations to homosexual couples. Once again, just portraying that Democrats are all about identity politics. And going back to Joe Biden for a minute, he was at some stupid thing. He appeared on MSNBC. And the Reverend Al Sharpton is still, I didn't realize this because I haven't heard anything. I haven't had any really good sound bites from the Reverend Al Sharpton in quite a while. But apparently the Reverend Al Sharpton still has his television program on MSNBC, in which Joe Biden decides that he's going to compare the Trump election to the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy.
I think what's happening now is I think that Donald Trump may have reawakened sensibilities in this country to say, whoa, maybe we can do this now, just like our generation was awakened when Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy were assassinated. Whole generation said, I'm back in, man.
I'm back in now. Yeah, that Donald Trump got elected, and it reminded me of the assassination of Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King. So now, as a dumb millennial that doesn't, I'm sorry, if you're a millennial listening to this program, then you're clearly not a dumb millennial. But for the dumb millennials that probably don't know, that Donald Trump got elected, and it reminded me of when Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. got assassinated. So now I'm back in. I am in the game. First of all, you had to be in the game. I don't know. Bernie Sanders is in the news, too. He was on Face the Nation.
There are ICE raids set to start, estimates of some 2,000 people or so who will be targeted. Is this appropriate?
No, it's not. It is absolutely not appropriate.
But specifically on this point, the 2,000 that are supposed to be targeted haven't shown up for court dates. Essentially, they're not following the asylum process, the legal standards when they're here. So should they be prosecuted? Should they be deported?
I don't like this deportation thing at all, and I think Trump uses this as a beginning to do worse things to come.
Oh, so he doesn't like the fact that somebody came here seeking asylum. They received an order to appear in court. The court order said that if you don't show up for court, the court orders for immigration court are very similar to any sort of court order that says you have to appear on such and such date for your hearing, whether it's a bond hearing, a preliminary hearing, whatever kind of scheduling hearing, I don't care what it is. The judge says you're supposed to be in court on such and such date. And if you fail to appear on such and such date, there's a legal remedy for that. There's a bench warrant issued for your arrest to haul your ass in front of that judge that you failed to appear in front of. It's the same in immigration court, except in this case, people have come here illegally under false pretenses, apply for asylum. They have overwhelmed the system, so they get an order to appear for their asylum hearing on some date in the future, and then they fail to appear on that date. At that point, under our immigration laws, there is a deportation order issued. You didn't show up for court. We're going to send you back from where you came. That's what Trump was going to enforce until, for what I don't know what's going on between him and Nancy Pelosi. But Nancy Pelosi asked him to put it off, and he put the deportation of some 200,000 people off until, I guess, the Democrats could do something. I don't know what the president's thinking, but the Democrats are not going to do anything. Democrat candidates are literally saying they will not follow or enforce the law, just like Bernie Sanders just did. There is a deportation order issued. You don't even show up for your asylum hearing the first time. Now the deportation order is issued, and the president has said, now you're going to go. And Bernie Sanders says that's not appropriate. The Democrats, in all honesty, the Democrats are just lawless. Former South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy, gosh, I miss him, was on Fox News Sunday, and he said, talking to Maria Bartiromo, that a transcript that he had read involving the interaction between the FBI and a Trump campaign associate, believed to be George Papadopoulos, actually changed his mind changed his perspective about the Russian probe. Listen to this.
Hey, the last time you joined us, we were talking about the informants that the FBI used to entrap certain people, potentially, like George Papadopoulos. And you said that there were certain transcripts that had the potential to persuade people should they be made public. Now, I know that the president has given the authority to William Barr to declassify certain documents, but can you talk to us a bit more about those transcripts that have the power to persuade? What exactly are we looking for? What's most damning?
Well, I think anytime law enforcement talks to a target or a potential target, they're either going to record that conversation or they're going to monitor it in real time and take notes. Some of us have seen transcripts of those conversations. And I was supportive of Mueller. I was supportive of the idea to investigate what Russia did. But when I saw this transcript, it actually changed my perspective, because you want to think of law enforcement as being unbiased and disinterested in the outcome as long as we just find the facts. But when you have information that someone you think has done something wrong has in fact not done something wrong, when you have exculpatory information and you don't share it with others, And then you put that together with Strzok and Page and then the defensive briefings. Remember, Maria, the defense of Comey and the media and the Democrats has always been, some of the FBI was biased against Trump, and it didn't really matter. This really matters. When you have exculpatory information and you don't share it with the court, when you give two different kinds of defensive briefings to the candidates, depending on who you like and who you don't, then your bias begins to impact the investigation. That's what I saw when I saw the transcript, but your viewers should be entitled to make up their own minds.
And I think that's why the president needs to declassify these documents ASAP. And I've been calling for that for months. But I understand why he's not. And that is because the Attorney General, Bill Barr, and this U.S. attorney are conducting this investigation into the predicate for the Russian collusion, for the FISA warrants, for all of these things that occurred that got this entire 2.5-year fiasco started. That investigation needs to be completed. And as I've said on this podcast before, I want that investigation completed sooner rather than later. Now, I want it done correctly, and an investigation takes as long as an investigation takes. I get that. But we're running out of time. We're in the election season. We're less than 500 days away from the 2020 election in November of 2020. So we've got to get this investigation done. Let those chips fall where they may, and then let the president release those documents. Now, that could be the October surprise, but quite frankly, I'd rather it be the July or August surprise. For Gowdy to come out and say that the transcripts that he read, that he saw, showed exculpatory evidence, meaning this, for just to put it in layman's terms. Exculpatory evidence means if you've been charged with murder and the prosecutor, the district attorney, has evidence that suggests that maybe you were not the perpetrator of that murder, the district attorney, the prosecutors are required to share that evidence with your counsel. They are required to disclose exculpatory evidence. And in this case, Gowdy is saying that he saw transcripts that showed exculpatory evidence that there was no Russian collusion, that there was no obstruction of justice. There was none of this going on. And all of that was held from the FISA court, was held from the Department of Justice, and that's what Barr's investigating. I got to tell you, I honestly believe that at some point when all of this feces hits the fan, I think it's going to shake both. Now, let me just take a deep breath. If the investigation that Barr conducts shows indeed that there was collusion with the FBI and the Department of Justice, the National Security Council, Susan Rice, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, the Clinton campaign, if all of these were intertwined to create this hoax about Russian collusion and to create the predicate to spy on the Trump campaign, and all of that is revealed to be true, that will shake the very foundations of this government. Because, Democrats love to talk about Watergate. This will be corruption of the highest order. I want those documents now. Tamara's at the undisclosed location. So yesterday evening, Sunday evening, I went out and had some Mexican food. Might have had a margarita or two. I don't remember. But I came across what has to be a prime example of pure unadulterated dumbassery simply because of the election of Donald Trump. There is a knitting and crochet site that, I don't know how to pronounce it, Ravelry, Ravelry. They are now banning any posts that support Donald Trump. Now, how crazy has the left gotten? When you're even forbidding speech on knitting sites. Here's what they tweeted out. They tweeted this out on Sunday. We are banning support of Donald Trump and his administration on Ravelry. We cannot provide a space that is inclusive of all and also allow support for open white supremacy. Now, they got a whole bunch of leftist support. But Trump supporters were not fond of being called white supremacists. So a bunch of people that knit and crochet responded in kind. Well, I guess I'm boycotting Ravelry. This is some dumbass feces. They are slow. They could just leave politics alone and talk about yarn. I'm so sick of all of this. Amen and amen. But here's what I find fascinating about it. I want you to think about it in these terms. If there truly is, now remember we had Obama derangement syndrome, so we had OBS. Now we got TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. But I don't recall anybody, and I don't know, let's just be honest. Do you think a knitting site, a conservative knitting site, would have ever had the intestinal fortitude to go, and I'm not saying they should, in fact, I'm glad they didn't, but do you think they would have had the intestinal fortitude to go boycott Barack Obama on their website and say that we're not going to do it because of what? He's black? Because that's what this site did on the other end. They tweeted this verbatim. Listen, we cannot provide a space that is inclusive of all and also allows support for open white supremacy. The left has won the culture war. We might as well just bend over and we might as well wave the white flag. Because when a knitting site says that Donald Trump, and my mom likes to crochet, and I'm sure you have mothers and grandmothers and others that maybe even you like to knit or crochet. I don't know. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But when you say that it's open white supremacy, you really are deranged. That's some really idiotic crap to pull. They apparently don't have any problem with somebody that supports a philosophy that has resulted in the subjugation and deaths of millions because, well, you got Bern Lightman, the website, that are knitting Bernie caps, red, white, and blue Bernie caps. He supports socialism that has killed millions of people. I guess that's okay. But Donald Trump, because he has, because he's what, Orange Man? With the funny hair? And somehow that translates into white supremacy? What we are doing is and think about this in terms of universities. So all of the universities where black students are demanding that they have their own, they have their own dorms, they have their own recreation center, they have their own student union, and now you have knitters and crocheters. Is that the right word? I don't know. You have knitters and crocheters saying that, nope, we think Donald Trump represents open white supremacy, so we're not going to allow any support or anything to do, any post supporting Donald Trump. Of course, I had to ask myself, who posts anything? And you're on a knitting site. Are people posting things about Donald Trump on a knitting site? But the point is this. We are self-segregating this society. We are now saying, nope, you can't bring your ideas here. We know that this is a knitting and crochet site. And we know that we have black knitters and black crocheters, and we might have some Asian knitters and Asian crocheters. And dare I say there may be some gay or straight knitters and crocheters. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here. But if you support Donald Trump, you can't post or be on our site. Self-segregation. We are building all of these walls. I shouldn't say we, because it's not us. But Democrats and their identity politics are segregating all of us into these little buckets. And the more, think about the buckets on just gender alone. That's what? 167? And then you have straight and gay and bisexual. And then you have all of the, well, you only have 3 races. So you only have Caucasian, Negroid, and Mongoloid. I'm not sure that, unless they try to create other races. But then you have all of the ethnicities. And then you have all of the things about, you may be handicapped, or you might be this, or you might be that. We are segregating ourselves, or we are allowing the left to segregate us, and it's destroying the country. If people can't go on a knitting site Now, I have to say, if you went on this knitting site and you were posting comments about politics, well, then shame on you. But shouldn't the proper response, instead of saying no post supporting Donald Trump, shouldn't the proper response be no post about politics? If you want to tell us about the great yarn you got off some yak or off some alpaca or off Lord knows what, post all you want about that. Or if you want to post about whatever, but don't post politics. Why does politics have to infest everything? Knitting. I was going to take up knitting, but I can't post anything about Donald Trump, so I guess I'll have to find something else to do. And if it's not white supremacy, it's the patriarchy. So the other dumbassery from the weekend is this. Slate has a story out that deodorant was created to solve a fake problem, and deodorant today thrives because of the patriarchy. I guess that makes me a proud member of the patriarchy. When I got up and showered this morning, after I dried off, I put on some deodorant. I am the patriarchy. I'm not kidding you. Slate tweeted out on Saturday their story that deodorants were created to solve a fake problem and that deodorant thrived solely because of the patriarchy. I guess Slate is on to me. Here's the inside story. And I think Slate is completely right. It is the patriarchy. The year was 1946. The war was just over. So a group of men in the Patriarchy Club came up with this brilliant plan to oppress women. We're going to tell women that they smell and that we have the cure, deodorant. And we have been shaming and oppressing women ever since. So if you use deodorant or you want your wife to use deodorant, I would suggest that you read the story. It's eye-opening. And then you do some real soul-searching. Because I've decided not to allow Tamara to wear deodorant or antiperspirant ever again. Because I'm not going to be a member of the patriarchy. And I'm not going to oppress her. And then I think the next time I'm on an elevator and somebody really has BO badly, I'm going to proudly say to them, aha, you are not a member of the patriarchy. And then just walk off. That's exactly what I will do. There's this doctor at the Oregon Health and Science University by the name of Esther Choo. She's an emergency room physician and an associate professor at the university. She is verified on Twitter, which means she has a blue check. She's written for some publication, and she's a speaker on racism and sexism in healthcare. You see, sexism is everywhere. Racism is everywhere, even in healthcare. She happens to be the president of the Academy of Women in Academic Emergency Medicine, but she's also a rabid leftist who seems to have a problem with white people. She tweeted this out on Friday. See what happens when you read your Twitter feed over the weekend? White people can be exhausting. Just an observation. That was the first tweet. That wasn't good enough. No. So Esther Choo had to tweet again. Her tweet reads, observation number 2. White people are going to prove my point on this very thread. And then she bragged how Twitter didn't see an issue with her tweet, even if everybody else did. So then she tweeted this, observation number 3. When people try to convince Twitter that white people are experiencing reverse racism, Twitter understands that is not a thing. Now, do you think she's going to suffer any problem from these tweets from her employer? Of course she won't. The Oregon Health and Science University News tweeted out after she sent her tweets, we have made Dr. Choo aware of the concerns to us and discussed the impact that public comments such as these can have. Notice that they didn't condemn her comments, not even the traditional we do not share her views comments. And a bunch of leftist doctors came to her defense basically arguing that the reaction to her comment proved her point about white people being exhausting. Physician Women Soar, that's some group on Twitter, tweeted, Dr. Choo works tirelessly to dismantle racism in medicine so that all patients can receive excellent care. We are exhausted reading these responses. Ironic, isn't it? And I thought, now I'm not going to Oregon anytime soon. The little trip I have to make on Tuesday is just in and out somewhere, and it is not Oregon. But I'm glad I'm not going to Oregon because my concern is, now remember, she practices emergency medicine. What if I have to go to the ER? I'm a white guy. And I look up and, I'm sitting there, I'm clutching my chest. I can't breathe because I'm having an aneurysm or I'm having angina and I'm having a heart attack or a stroke. And I can just see my life going away. I'm dying. And I'm thinking, oh, dear Lord, just give me a good, caring doctor. And so this woman walks up, and I think my life is going to be saved. And then I look at her name tag, and it says, Esther Choo. And I remember she's the one that tweeted, white people can be exhausting. And then I realize, not only am I a member of the Patriarchy, I'm a white guy. I just take my last breath, and I die there on the gurney, so Dr. Choo won't have to deal with a exhausting white person. Shame on you, Oregon. Oregon Health and Science University. You may bite me. I have a tendency sometimes to make fun of elected members of Congress, the House and the Senate, because all it takes is you just need to get, you need to win the majority. You need to get one more vote than your opponent, and you're a U.S. Senator. Senator Hirono from Hawaii is one of those people that sometimes I just think truly doesn't have a clue what she's doing. And it's disappointing. Well, first of all, it makes for great sound bites. But it's disappointing because whenever you go into a congressional hearing, you know who the witnesses are going to be. Your staff should have, anyway, put together the kinds of questions where you can seem intelligent, where you can ask the kinds of questions that can actually draw out information that might help you craft legislation, change policy, adopt new rules or regulations, or get rid of rules and regulations. Be an effective legislator. She's at a hearing with the head of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Now, in this soundbite, you're going to hear them refer to FRCs, which are these, well, according to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they're concentration camps, they're death camps or something, but they're these relocation centers where they're detention centers. And she's all upset about it. But I want you to listen to this exchange.
Mr. Albans, would you send your child to FRCs?
Again, I think
I'm sorry, I've got to pause for a moment. Sir, would you send your child to one of these? Well, no, because my child hasn't broken the law. No, because my child didn't enter the country illegally. So it's a stupid question to begin with. Now, what she's driving at is there's been for the entire weekend, I saw all of these stories about how horrible the conditions are. The Texas Tribune had this series of stories about, they can't get the good health care, they can't get toothbrushes, they can't get toilet paper. There's some woman who has to save water in her water bottle so she can mix formula. It's just, if you listen to the Texas Tribune, they're just hellholes. Well, they're not. But for just a moment, let's say they are. If they're truly hellholes, then Democrats, why don't you do something to fix the broken immigration system? And Republicans, why don't you do the same? Why don't, a pox on both of you? Get your asses together, fix the problem, change the asylum laws, secure the border, build a barrier, a wall, a border, whatever you want to call it, stop the flow of illegal aliens coming into this country. But anyway, back to Senator Hirono. So here she is with the head of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. And she says, would you send one of your children to one of these centers? Well, no, ma'am, I wouldn't, because my child hasn't broken the law. What he's really thinking is, how stupid are you? Well, she answers that.
Mr. Albans, would you send your child to FRCs?
Again, I think we're missing the point. These individuals are there because they have broken a law. There has to be a process.
They have broken a law only as deemed so by the president with his...
No, ma'am. They're there for violation of Title 8 of the Immigration of the U.S. and Nationality Act. They're U.S.C. 1325. That's illegal entry is both a criminal and civil violation. They are in those FRCs pending the outcome of that civil immigration process. They have broken the law.
Well, these are mainly, my understanding is that under zero tolerance, these are no longer civil proceedings, but in fact were criminal proceedings.
They were criminal proceedings when the Border Patrol prosecuted them, but at the conclusion of that process, once the individual came into ICE custody, they would go through administrative proceedings.
I'm confused.
It's actually quite simple. When you come across the border illegally, that is a criminal act. And at that point, Customs and Border Protection, the CBP, will prosecute you for an illegal entry. Now you are in the custody of the United States of America for having committed a crime. Now you're subjected to a civil process. You now have to be processed through our immigration system, which is why, depending on whether you came here illegally or you came here seeking asylum, but in both cases, you get an order to come back for an immigration hearing. That is a civil matter. If you don't show up for court when you are supposed to per the court order, then it becomes a criminal matter again. It's not confusing at all. But I guess for a United States Senator, anything's confusing. In news that broke since I did the podcast on Friday, I guess this question arises. Is it possible that a Hollywood homosexual of black skin who is buddies with Michelle Obama is not above the law after all? You see, there is hope regarding the Jussie Smollett case. If you don't remember Jussie Smollett, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, remember he is the black actor from some FX series called Empire or something, where he was upset that he wasn't getting paid enough, so he faked a hate crime. He went out on during the polar vortex, or whatever they called it this year, in Chicago, wind chills like, 1,000 below zero, and he decides to go out at 2 o'clock in the morning after returning on a flight from somewhere. And of course, whenever I return from an overseas flight, the first thing I think of, particularly if it's like 1,000 below zero, is I think, you know what? I'm going to put on some flip-flops and go to Subway. See if I can't find 12-inch Subway. See if I can't find a 12-inch foot long. If it's a 6-inch, why do they call it a foot long if it's 6 inches? I don't know. Anyway, so he goes out and he's paid these two brothers from Nigerian descent or something. He pays them to throw something on him and to put a noose around his neck and to call him the N-word. And then he strolls back with his 6 inch or 12 inches. I don't know which he prefers. He strolls back with 6 or 12 inches, goes back to his apartment, waits a little while, then calls 911 and says, yeah, these people call me the N-word and they put a noose around my neck. In fact, it's still around my neck and my 12 inches are getting cold. My 12 inches are beginning to shrink up a little bit. That's that guy. Yeah, that guy. Well, anyway, a Cook County judge on Friday did order the appointment of a special prosecutor in that case, which might actually lead to new charges against that actor. Now, despite the laws that he broke during his hate hoax, he was allowed to skate by Kim Foxx. No doubt on the orders from someone more powerful, like, Michelle Obama's chief of staff. Started to say Secretary of State, but that's Barack Obama's sweetie. Judge Michael Tooman ruled that when State's Attorney Kim Foxx recused herself from the case, she did not have the authority to appoint her replacement. Now, according to the judge, if there are, quote, reasonable grounds to believe that any other criminal offense was committed, special prosecutor may commence the prosecution of any crime as may be suspected. Now, disturbing the peace, filing a false police report, mail fraud involving a hate hoax letter that he sent to himself, it really shouldn't take those investigators very long to find a crime. Although I suppose if you appoint a special prosecutor, it might take 2.5 years, but I digress. Now, the judge's ruling says that the special prosecutor was to be appointed so as to, quote, restore the public's confidence in the integrity of... I'm sorry, I have to laugh at this one. The judge's ruling says that the appointment of a special prosecutor by Ms. Fox was to restore the public's confidence in the integrity of our criminal justice system. You know, I think putting Jussie Smollett behind bars might be a step in the right direction. But at least out of Chicago, any news like this is fantastic news. Let's get let's get several taxpayer relief shots in. Agent Jedah's been gone, but now he's catching up. So now I gotta send him a check now. The first one comes to us out of Detroit, and I want to play this one because according to the story, the Detroit Popo arrested a man who gunned down the armed teenager that shot his 15-year-old son on Thursday night.
Choo's Hillary Golston joining us now live from the scene with the latest. Hillary?
Well, what I can tell you right now is that the saddest part of this is that this may come down to a video game, some kind of dispute over that. Now, what we know right now is that police sources say that information is very limited, but it is also conflicting. Police Captain Russell Solano is telling me that he believes the story may change.
I came down to my car and room in my house. And I'm scary because it's loud, very loud.
The 15-year-old and the young man who is now dead met up for the purchase of a video game. That was outside of the 15-year-old's home on Honora near Pitt. Police say sometime around 7:15 Thursday night this all went down. The person who police say is between 15 and 18 years old tried to rob the 15-year-old.
Right now, we are holding the scene, waiting on homicide detectives to do their initial investigation and start this thing.
Apparently, the robber, who would eventually be shot to death, shoots the teen in the face. The teen's dad comes out. There's a scuffle, and dad shoots the person who allegedly tried to rob his son.
One time, a lot, more than 10. And the second time, more than 10 too. So it's a lot. It's like a lot.
The 15-year-old's 36-year-old father is now in police custody. We understand that 15-year-old was taken to Children's Hospital but has been released. Captain Solano says that it's expected that this young man, thankfully, will be okay. We are live in Southwest Detroit. I'm Hillary Golston on The Edge.
So let's recap for a second. A 15-year-old boy is outside his house to meet a buyer for the video game console that the 15-year-old is selling. The buyer pulls a gun. The father sees his son being threatened by the thug, and in fact, according to the story, it sounds like the thug shot the son. So the father comes out, sees his son's being threatened by the thug, attacks the thug, knocks the gun from his hand. The father picks up the thug's gun and shoots and kills him with his own gun. Now, when you go to the other story that's in the Detroit News, here's how it's described. In a matter of just seconds, people in this Southwest Detroit neighborhood were caught in the middle of a shooting. The shooting is right in the middle of two homes. Leila Mahay didn't know where the bullets come from, so she hid. Someone was pointing a gun at a 15-year-old boy. At that stage, if I see somebody now, if my adult son or my grandson or any of my family's in the driveway, and I see somebody pointing a gun at them, I'm not going to go out and try to take the gun away from the thug. I'm going to immediately shoot that person. And you may say that I'm a terrible person for doing that. But I would have a reasonable fear for my son or my grandson or any family member if I see someone pointing a gun at them, close range, in my driveway. What I was told, according to Russell Solano, the Detroit Police Department, what I was told is the father saw the robbery in progress. Instantly, the father ran outside, according to this news story. Solano, the captain, says, the father comes out of the house, sees what's going on. They fight. The gun drops to the ground. Dad picks it up and fired shots, striking the perp. Officer said the dad shot the suspect who died. But in the middle of the chaos, his son was also shot in the face. But Solano says there is no evidence the father shot his own son. Why do I give you all these details? Because just as I described what I would do if I saw a member of my family in the driveway with some thug pointing a gun at them. This is why you can never assume that just because you believe you are in the right, that you will be in the right. Now, we don't know what the follow-up is. And in fact, they may have just taken the father into custody just to get a statement. But even if that's the case, my advice to the father would be, you don't give a statement till you get a lawyer. Because this is a question of whether or not he acted reasonably to defend his son. Based on the circumstances that are described to me in the news story and in the print story, I think the father is justified. Doesn't mean that that's how the cops are going to see it. So anytime you hear a taxpayer relief shot, or you read about one and you instantly think, well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. The guy did exactly what I would have done, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's right, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no. That doesn't mean that's the way the cops are going to see it. Make sure you have insurance. Just make sure you have insurance. That's all I'm going to say. The next taxpayer relief shot comes to us from Jefferson County, Colorado.
Officer-involved shooting. No one from law enforcement was hurt, but a suspect is dead. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office says the SWAT team tracked a Denver suspect with multiple warrants to this apartment complex.
The suspect, he opened up fire on our officers, who then returned fire and wounded him fatally.
That's all you need to know. Just cut to the chase on this one. Thugs, when you open fire on a cop, you're probably going to end up DRT. Dead right there. Easy lesson, but they don't seem to learn it. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Michael Brown Unplugged. I really do appreciate it. As a reminder, you can now find us on the iHeart app. You just, if you used to listen to the radio program on iHeart, you can now listen to the podcast on iHeart. You just, instead of the Michael Brown Show, you look for Michael Brown Unplugged. And as always, you can still find us on iTunes. Subscribe to us on iTunes. And do me a favor, if you have a chance when you're on iTunes, go over to your subscription, leave a 5-star rating if you can, and write a nice review, and we'll put a check in the mail. And then be sure and follow us on social media. And you can do that simply by going to my website, michaelbrowntoday.com. That's michaelbrowntoday.com. And across the bottom, you'll see all the icons for social media. We post the podcast on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, all those places that you can follow us and interact with me. Do that at michaelbrowntoday.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.